up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, the UN Security Council strongly condemns North Korea's recent launch of ballistic missiles, calling it a violation of UN resolutions. President Baku is in Germany to learn from the German experience of reunification is due to unveil a blueprint for inter-Korean reunification during a highly anticipated speech in Dresden. Plus, Korea's industrial output contracts on February, but experts say this is a temporary trend and the economy will soon pick up again. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Oh Jin-ju in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this lunchtime, reunification continued to be on the top of the agenda for Park Geun-hye on the day 3 of her state visit to Germany. From visiting the remains of the Berlin Wall to meeting with the leaders of German unification, our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun takes us through a day in the president's reunification campaign.
President Park, the leader of the world's only divided nation, visited a highly symbolic site of unity and freedom. Berlin's East Side Gallery is what's left of the Berlin Wall, covered in painted murals by more than 100 artists from around the world to commemorate the 1989 fall of the wall that led to German unification. The South Korean president also visited a photo exhibition that compares scenes from the demilitarized zone on the Korean peninsula and Germany's Grünes Bund, which is now an ecological park. The president had proposed turning the DMZ into something similar.
우리 나라의 DMZ도 언젠가는 평화의 상징으로 바뀌는 그런 날이 올 것이다 하는 그런 희망과 기대를 갖게 됩니다.
Staying with a reunification campaign, President Park met 5 former and current officials who were at the center of German unification, asking them to share their insights and wisdom. The group told the president there were frequent people exchanges between the East and the West that eventually led to a peaceful reunification. They said the German case is different from the situation on the Korean peninsula in that East Germans themselves had wanted change. At a luncheon with Korean and German businessmen, President Park vowed to prepare the Korean peninsula for a peaceful reunification. She then asked the business community to do their part in achieving a successful economic integration between the two Koreas. President Park is now in Dresden for the second leg of her state visit. Here, she is expected to lay out details of her reunification policy during a speech on Friday. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News, Dresden.
Now, as Yoo-sun just mentioned, the nation is all ears for President Park's upcoming speech in the German city of Dresden, where she's expected to unveil her vision for reunification on the Korean peninsula. The location plays a significant role since Korea looks at Germany's unification as a model for its own. Our Kwon Soa tells us what we can learn from the German case and what challenges remain.
Similar in many ways, but different in others. For a long time, the case of Germany's unification has been seen as a possible model for unification on the Korean peninsula. However, the biggest difference between Korea and Germany is the difference between South and North Korea. While East Germans were practically crying out for unification, South and North Koreans are divided on the issue. This is why analysts say trust will play a big role in laying the groundwork for successful unification.
Trust from the North Korean people, trust from the international community, and then trust from ourselves. These 3 trust factors combined will make unification possible.
Experts say the difference between the culture and lifestyle of the two Koreas must be transformed into a sense of intimacy without pressing the North's people to change. South Koreans need to be convinced unification will enhance Korea's image, attract foreign investment, and eventually make a stronger economy. Also, just like Britain, France, and the US agreed to Germany's reunification, Korea must receive consensus from nations concerned, namely the US, Japan, China, and Russia. Although experts do not think Korea's will become one overnight like in Germany's case, there are lessons to be learned.
Germany did not actually prepare for a reunification, but as West Germany liquidated the Nazis, they achieved a civil society and transparent politics, which eventually made them an advanced democratic nation. Also, they achieved the miracle on the Rhine River that made them a world economic leader.
North Korea's weak economy means the North would gain a great deal through reunification, but its constant provocations and unpredictability could prove a thorn in the side of progress on the matter. Experts say that while North Korea has expressed an interest in reunification, it doesn't want to play second fiddle to the South during the process. Kwon Soa, Arirang News.
The UN Security Council has strongly condemned North Korea's recent ballistic missile launches, calling them a clear violation of existing resolutions. World powers, however, are less clear about what to do next. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The UN Security Council has spoken with one voice on North Korea's launch of 2 mid-range ballistic missiles earlier this week. Expressing deep concern after a closed-door meeting on Thursday, the 15-nation council said it would hold consultations and respond appropriately to Pyongyang's latest provocation. The council's president, Luxembourg's UN ambassador Sylvie Lucas, said it was a clear violation of Security Council resolutions. Despite concerns that they wouldn't, North Korea's biggest ally, China, supported the statement, but only to a point. Experts say it's unlikely Beijing will give its backing to additional economic sanctions on the North. In 2006 and 2009, the Security Council slapped 3 sanctions, banning the North from launching any type of missile that has ballistic capabilities. They followed North Korea's first and second nuclear tests. The Security Council expanded sanctions after another nuclear test in February of last year. North Korea fired 2 medium-range Nodong ballistic missiles into the East Sea in the early hours of Wednesday morning, Korea time. It was the first such mid-range missile launch since 2009. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, the United Nations isn't the only one mulling over additional sanctions on Pyongyang. US Congress wants to hit the leadership with more punitive measures for its brutal repression and abuse of the North Korean people. Connie Kim reports.
The United States is attempting to fast-track legislation to impose fresh sanctions against North Korea for its grave human rights abuses. Speaking at a congressional hearing on North Korea, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Ed Royce, said Washington will take every measure to hold the North Korean leader and his aides responsible for crimes against humanity. The bill is designed to directly affect the regime by cutting Kim Jong-un off from his hefty finances. It includes plans to ban financial institutions and other countries from having any kind of trade or cash transactions with Pyongyang. This would have a significant effect as North Korea is believed to have billions of dollars tucked away in various tax havens. The legislation, dubbed the North Korea Sanctions Enforcement Act of 2013, was proposed by Royce in April last year to further isolate Pyongyang from the international financial system. However, a report published by the U.S. Congressional Research Service suggests the bill could cause friction with South Korea, especially if Seoul decides to expand its joint Kaesong industrial complex with North Korea. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
A government official here in Seoul says the meeting between the top nuclear negotiators of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan is expected to be held in the near future as a follow-up to what the leaders of the 3 countries agreed at an international nuclear security summit this week. But it seems that plans could change unless Tokyo changes its attitude regarding historical issues with Seoul. Our Shin Se-min explains.
The top nuclear negotiators from South Korea, the U.S., and Japan will be sitting down for talks soon, according to a senior South Korean official. The talks were proposed earlier this week when the leaders of the 3 nations met on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. The official says the discussions will center on strengthening cooperation against North Korea's nuclear threat and the possible restart of six-party talks. Washington is believed to be pushing for the talks as a way to propel Korea-Japan relations forward, which have reached a low point in recent months over historical differences.
And we've been very clear that we think it's important for South Korea and Japan to have a better relationship and to work together both directly and trilaterally.
President Park has also made her positions clear that bilateral relations with Japan will not improve unless Tokyo faces up to its past wrongdoings. In another possible development, a U.S. source says high-ranking South Korean and Japanese defense officials could be heading to Washington on April 17th and 18th for defense trilateral talks. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A North Korea expert from the United States is sounding a fresh alarm about the nuclear threat posed by Pyongyang. Patrick Cronin, a senior advisor from the Center for a New American Security, says armed conflicts could be sparked on the peninsula if South Korea and the U.S. fail to stop North Korea's nuclear program, and the window is small. Cronin said the North could deploy strategic nuclear weapons within just 3 years. Although he acknowledged Seoul and Washington have a stronger combined military, Cronin questioned whether they'd be fully prepared if a war were to suddenly break out. He urged South Korea and the U.S. prepare for any uncertainties that may stem from the Kim Jong-un regime. The South Korean military on early Friday returned a North Korean fishing boat that crossed over the maritime border that separates the two Koreas in the West Sea. The Joint Chiefs of Staff says the boat sailed around 2 kilometers over the northern limit line late Thursday afternoon, ignoring several warnings to return to the north. The boat was seized along with 3 crew members. Officials said that poor visibility caused by fog may have caused the boat to drift into South Korean waters.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin Ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about The International Monetary Fund has agreed to provide up to $18 billion in loans for Ukraine, which, along with aid from the international community, will add up to $27 billion in total assistance in the next 2 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
The International Monetary Fund on Thursday approved a bailout of up to $18 billion for Ukraine, throwing a much-needed lifeline to the crisis-stricken nation. Ukraine has been on the verge of default since the ousting of former President Viktor Yanukovych cut off $15 billion in aid from Russia. In a statement, the IMF said the 2-year package is expected to unlock more loans from the international community, including the U.S. and the European Union, to a total of about $27 billion. In return for the cash injection, Kiev has promised to undertake stringent economic, energy, and financial reforms. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk said the nation's economy could contract by up to 10% this year without IMF support. On Wednesday, the new government agreed to raise the price of domestic gas by 50% from May, a demand of the IMF. U.S. President Barack Obama welcomed the IMF agreement, calling it a major step forward that would help stabilize Ukraine's economy. U.S. Congress on Thursday also overwhelmingly passed bills that provide $1 billion in loan guarantees to Ukraine and impose sanctions on Russia for its actions in Crimea. Moscow officially annexed Crimea following a referendum on March 16th. The United Nations has also thrown its support behind Ukraine. It approved a non-binding resolution that affirmed Ukraine's territorial integrity and called the Russian-backed referendum vote for Crimea's secession illegal. The largely symbolic resolution was backed by 100 countries, with 11 voting against and 58 abstentions. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, a little closer to home, Korea's industrial output dropped in February for the second straight month, raising concerns the domestic economy is not, in fact, on track to a strong recovery. Business sentiment among Korean manufacturers last month also remained weak. Our Hwang Jie has the details.
Korea's economic conditions might not be improving as quickly as many had hoped. Statistics Korea said Friday that the nation's industrial output shrank 1.8% last month from January, marking the second straight month of decline. The agency attributed the drop in output to slowing production in the nation's auto sector, which fell more than 7% in February on month. It cited fewer exports of Korean automobiles to the United States due to the harsh winter there and consumers waiting for the scheduled release of new models. The agency added that the decline is most likely temporary because the output numbers from January to February improved from the fourth quarter last year. Experts, however, remain dubious about the strength of the recovery this year. They say the domestic economy faces an uphill battle in trying to maintain the pace of recovery seen in the second half of last year.
If the economic growth rate reaches 1% every quarter this year from a quarter earlier, like the second half of 2013, the economy will be able to expand over 4% this year. But for now, that remains questionable.
The Bank of Korea data also showed that business sentiment among Korean manufacturers remained weak last month. Although the index reached 81, up from 78 in February, the reading is still below the benchmark 100, which means there are more pessimists than optimists. The central bank expects the Korean economy to grow 3.8% this year after a 3% growth last year. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
The nation's financial authorities are gearing up for stricter guidelines on how customer information is shared between financial holding companies and their affiliates. The Financial Services Commission and the Financial Supervisory Service are reportedly looking into instituting the changes as soon as May, in fact. Under the new restrictions, financial institutions would need to get prior consent from customers before sharing their personal information with other parties. They'd also have to use client numbers instead of resident registration numbers. The changes were spurred after the personal data of up to 20 million people in Korea was leaked from 3 credit card firms in January. And now for a look at our international headlines, we're going to turn it over to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center. Good afternoon to you, Eunice.
Good afternoon.
Now, Eunice, the hunt for the missing Malaysia Airlines jetliner continues, and we're getting news that recovery teams have altered its search area.
That's right, Jinju. This morning, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, helming the search along the southern corridor, said it will shift its search to an area 1,100 kilometers northeast. This based on a new credible lead and analysis of radar data that showed the plane was flying faster than previously thought and likely ran out of fuel sooner. And that is the direction search planes took to after being grounded yesterday afternoon due to bad weather and poor visibility. Today's mission takes off amidst news that Thailand and Japan have sent new satellite sightings of potential debris zones to Malaysian authorities. Thailand's satellite images showed some 300 floating objects, the largest suspected cluster yet, the objects ranging in size from 2 to 15 meters. Japan said its satellite on Wednesday located some 10 objects near the same area. It will likely take several more days to process the data. And Turkey's Telecommunications Authority has apparently moved to block access to YouTube 1 day after a Turkish court ordered a cancellation of a Twitter ban. The authority said it took an administrative measure against YouTube after, quote, technical analysis and legal consideration. This followed what appeared to be a leaked audio recording of a highly confidential conversation among Turkish officials, which was uploaded onto YouTube. Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan appeared to confirm that audio leak, as he called it, villainous and dishonest, during a rally Thursday. Prime Minister Erdogan faces important local elections on Sunday. And during his European tour, U.S. President Barack Obama swung through the Vatican to meet Pope Francis for the first time. During the nearly 2-hour visit, a Vatican statement said the two leaders discussed current areas of conflict, a reference to Ukraine and Syria. President Obama said domestic issues such as his drive for immigration reform was discussed as well. Upon reception, President Obama told the pontiff he's a great admirer and presented a symbolic gift of fruit and vegetable seeds from the White House garden. The U.S. leader invited Pope Francis to the White House, to which the Pope is said to have said "Como no" in Spanish or "Why not" in English.
Good morning, everyone.
Microsoft has unveiled a special touch-first version of Office for the iPad. The company's chief executive officer, Satya Nadella, debuted the software suite Thursday that will run on Apple's tablet PC. The suite includes Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. The read-only version of Office for iPad will be available as a free app. To create and edit documents, though, users will have to subscribe to Microsoft's cloud-based service, Office 365.
Good Friday afternoon. I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, it feels like the weather condition is 2 months ahead of calendar. It's too warm to be March, and the early summer-like weather pattern should continue today, as today's highs will be similar or warmer than yesterday. And here in the capital, readings will soar to 23 degrees Celsius. Now that's 1 or 2 degrees higher than yesterday, but it's quite dusty and hazy right now. In fact, fine dust alert was issued this morning, so be sure to have a dust mask with you today. And in the skies, it's not going to be as sunny as yesterday. Again, haze is covering up the peninsula right now, and they will be joined by increasing clouds in the afternoon and nationwide showers by tomorrow. So we're expecting anywhere from between 5 to 70 millimeters of rainfall. Southern regions and Jeju should receive heavier showers tomorrow. And it looks like this round of rain should drop temperatures a few degrees, but readings will still remain on the mild side. And this relatively warm spell we've been having is causing spring flowers to bloom earlier than usual. So blanket of yellow, pink, and white blossoms will spread over the country very soon. And I'll be sure to give you more updates on that on my later weather report. So please do keep that in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will jump up to 23, and Daegu and Gwangju should top out at 25 and 24 respectively, while Busan should get up to 19 under lots of sunshine. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will peak at 21 and 25, and Dokdo rises to 18, and Mount Kumgang will hit at 15. Well, as we can see from these numbers, the temperature gap will continue to be quite wide, so please dress accordingly to avoid getting sick. Well, that's all for me this week, and hope you have a wonderful weekend. And it's time to take a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, those are the stories we're following at this hour, and be sure to enjoy the early spring sunshine we're having a lot of today and this weekend, especially if you're watching us here in Korea.
And Mark and I will be back at the same time on Monday. Have a great weekend and thank you for watching.